You know, there's all these stories about, you know, guys over in Macedonia who are running these fake news sites.
Number 24 is content farms in Macedonia.
Бидејќи ако се направи грешка, таа ќе биде кобна. Нема враќање назад.
So Europe need to remain more sexy lady in the world.
Ајде, мајката!
Господа ја чува Македонија и низините граѓани.
Kastriot Rejepi, formerly of the ethnic Albanian minority party Besa, but since kicked out, resurfaced on Monday, November 15, after having disappeared the previous week right before a critical vote on Thursday, November 11, Armistice Day, that could have brought down Zoran Zaev and his regime. This led many to believe that Rejepi was kidnapped, that he was being held by rival party DUI led by Ali Ahmeti, and was subject to various types of threats and attacks to avoid voting to bring down the Zaev government. But no, he eventually said he thought about it, talked to the, quote, international partners in the EU and US, unquote, and decided it was best for Macedonia to have a, quote, stable government, unquote, for the time being, or at least until December 14, when Rejepi was allegedly told that Macedonia would, quote, join the EU, unquote, on that day. Though, in the meantime, it is Zoran Zaev who has now gone missing and a photo from last Thursday's failed vote shows him sitting in Parliament, looking very pensive and very much like a true captive, while apparent surfer boy Artan Gruby flashes a big smile and some sort of gang sign, knowing that DUI, at least, can continue raping Macedonia for a little while longer. We'll discuss all of this and nothing else, well, maybe the Bulgarian elections too, on this episode of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. I'm Jason Miko, coming to you from the foot of the Catalina Mountains in Oro Valley, Arizona.
And this is Cvetin from an undisclosed location in the vicinity of Skopje, Macedonia.
Are you going to put out a Facebook post or a video with a blank screen behind you and say that all is well? And
yeah, holding a tablet with a daily updated version of Drudge Report so they can see that I'm still alive.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. Wow, this is episode 127 of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. We're recording this on Wednesday. Let me get this right. November 17. Mm-hmm. Last week I got it wrong. And again, that critical timeline. Last Thursday, Armistice Day, November 11, was the vote that VMRO and their new quote unquote partners, I guess, thought they had the votes to bring down the government. They had a no confidence vote. Vote of no confidence in the government, but Rejepi, this formerly of the Besa party, decided to go walkabout and went missing, and leading to all these speculations that he was kidnapped. And so they didn't have the votes. The Zaev government did not fall, but it looks pretty bad for the Zaev government, for the Zaev regime right now. So. Yeah. And as I understand, as we record this on the 17th, Zaev is still missing.
Yeah, exactly. We kept accusing him of being the kidnapper in this case, that he practically kidnapped a member of parliament to bring the opposition from the 61 votes they needed down to 60, which is not sufficient. So we kept accusing him of being a kidnapper, and now the poor bastard hasn't been seen since Thursday evening.
Now he has put out a few Facebook posts and things of that nature.
Somebody has put out Facebook posts.
Somebody, yes, that's right. Yeah, who runs his social media account? It's probably not him.
He's down to a few loyalists. They're not even sending out their best and brightest to give statements. It's just like two former journalists who are very low on the totem pole, on the pecking order in his DSM PR machine. They're giving statements. And, you don't even see other dignitaries of the party coming out. It's a complete, bunker mentality.
Right. Although we did see the defense minister, Radmila Shekarinska, photo ops with NATO. So
she's out and about, yeah.
She's out and about. She is. Is she the heir apparent, at least from the international side, to all of this?
I mean, she was the first to flee the party, to retire. So we thought that she's on her way out and she's leaving it all to Zaev. And Zaev was just re-elected party leader half a year ago. And this was the Congress when he removed Shekerinska. And it was a victorious Congress. He quote unquote won the 2020 elections, even though it was like a completely narrowly fought affair with them and VMRO. And he kicked out Shekerinska, so he looked like a complete winner of the situation. And now everything is turned upside down. The US ambassador is meeting with Shekerinska frequently. They're posting photographs, so she's apparently announcing Shekerinska, but when and if Zaev goes, I think there's going to be a real fight between her and half a dozen other people to replace him.
Well, not if, but when is correct. Yeah. So he'll go at some point. It's probably soon. So you've got Moskovsky is calling for early elections. Others are as well. Yeah. Zaev is missing, putting out statements here and there. And of course, now going back to Rzepi, so he came before Parliament on Monday, the what was that, the 15th?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
So Mickovsky announced he has the votes. What was it, on Saturday, I think, before the vote was on Thursday, the 11th. So the weekend before, Mickovsky had this, politically, earthquake. A political earthquake was caused by a photograph of Mickovsky together with Levica, with the Alliance of Albanians, several representatives, a BESA representative, and that was it. 61 votes.
Right.
Before that, the opposition had 58, but Levica has 2 votes. The Alliance of Albanians has 12, 15, something like that. It was a disparate group of parties, and they were still 3 votes short. And this is exactly what was provided to them by BESA. BESA left the coalition. They were with Zaev. They even had a joint list with SDSM in the 2020 elections, and they helped SDSM nominally win the elections by a few dozens of thousands of votes against VMRO and by several seats. And they said, but then they had bruising fights with the main Albanian partner Zaev has, DUI party. They fought for the for the city hall of Tetovo. There was another village where they fought, and they felt that the courts are trying to screw them over in favor of DUI. So they used this as the initial, the detonator to say we are leaving the coalition. And suddenly Mickovsky had 61 votes, and he had them at the same table, all together, Fellowship of the Ring style. We're here, we're bringing the government down.
Right.
But, again, most of these guys were with Zaev in the past. Albanians are very loyal to the US embassy. They are corruptible. Macedonian members of parliament are also corruptible. So it was not like we didn't have the sense that you can trust them 100%. But we thought that we can trust their sense of self-interest because DUI has been accumulating power since 2002, and it was uninterrupted in government since 2008. And these are half a dozen government departments. These are dozens of public offices, like institutions. These are thousands of jobs which you can mid-management, maybe tens of thousands of jobs in total. Many of them are no-show jobs, so you can really fire their people easily because they haven't been going to work. This is a peculiar feature of DUI in government. So the Albanian party said, okay, we bring down DUI. Mickovsky brings down Zaev. There is no hope of joining the EU anyway. It's all a lost cause. There is no more faith in Zaev's promise that he will deliver on EU accession through concessions to our neighbors. So why not? Let's finish him. He said he's going to resign, but you can't trust Zaev at all in this regard. He announced that he's postponing his resignation. And then the opposition parties just said, okay, we're going to give it a shot, even though, we all had a fishy feeling about this. But then there are other small parties which are with Zaev, like the Liberal Democratic Party, the Dom Party, the Democratic Alliance. There is like half a dozen ethnic parties who have seats in parliament. So they all could at some point abandon Zaev. So even if VMRO loses some of the Albanian voters, there is a chance that somebody else jumps to their aid, cuts a deal. So I was feeling pretty good, and Apasiev was announcing we have 64 votes, like 3 other people have joined our cause, etc. But in the end, it completely failed with this apparent kidnapping of a member of parliament.
Right. So right now, Rzepi was kicked out of Besa.
Yeah.
By the party, but he's still a member of parliament, correct?
Yeah, he's a free agent now.
Okay. Free agent. Oh,
yeah.
Using a sports term here. Okay. Yeah. So so the government effectively has right now 60 votes, and
or 59. He still
60.
hasn't said he's joining them.
Okay, so 59. Even if it was 60 is still not a majority.
Yeah.
So it's effectively it's a hung parliament. It can't do anything, can't vote on anything, can't even convene because you need 61 seats. And I know that the finance minister or the economy minister was saying we've got a budget we got to pass. Now then there's alternative, the other ethnic Albanian party that is being invited, I guess, to join the government. Yeah. And they've got 4 or 5 seats, I think.
4.
4
they
seats.
would
Okay.
they would replace Besa, take their Department of Agriculture, which Besa held, but also probably they would ask for more because Zaev is in desperate situation. They can ask for whatever.
They can ask for whatever they want. Yeah, they're like Joe Manchin in the U.S. Senate. So.
Yeah. Exactly.
So. And they're going to make a decision. I guess they've got a party leaders meeting next week to kind of talk about that. So in the meantime, again, today is Wednesday, November 17th. This may drop today, may drop tomorrow. But there's, 5, 6, 7 days between now and when they will actually meet and make a decision. In the meantime, nothing's going to happen in Parliament, or at least nothing can happen because you can't even convene the Parliament. We should also talk a little bit about this in relation to Bulgaria. So Bulgaria just had elections for the 3rd time this year on Sunday for parliament as well as for president, and so they've tried to have elections twice this year. They had elections. They just couldn't form a government, so they've had caretaker governments, and of course Bulgaria is the one holding up Macedonia's the start of talks for Macedonia as well as Albania with the European Union. But they had elections. It looks like this new party, We Continue the Change, I think is the name.
Yeah, Продължаваме промяната, something like that.
Yeah, so 2 guys, I think Harvard educated, I guess they were dual American Bulgarian citizens. They obviously to run a government, they have to give up their American citizenship. But it looks like they came in ahead with 26% roughly. They came in ahead of Gerb, which is Boyko Borisov, the longtime Prime Minister of Bulgaria. He came in, I think his party came in with like 23%, and then all the other parties came in. So bottom line though, and Rumen Radev, the president, didn't quite make the 50% threshold, so they've got to have a runoff this Sunday for that. But he's basically assured, another term as president.
Yeah.
Even so, these parties all have to, figure out, if they can form a government. I'm assuming they can in one form or another. And then you've got the deadline that I mentioned in the monologue of December 14, when is the next opportunity for the European Union to agree to begin talks for EU accession for Macedonia and, of course, Albania. But that means that Bulgaria has to lift its quote-unquote veto before then. And again, this is the 17th. That's less than a month away. I don't think it's possible, although Bujar Osmani, the foreign minister of Macedonia, keeps running around saying, oh, yes, of course it's possible. But they've been saying that for, 185 years?
Yeah.
It just, it ain't going to happen. Plus, Bulgaria has a list of demands, which are still on the table, I believe, for Macedonia to agree to. all having to do with Macedonia's name and identity and history. Well, partly with the name, but mostly with the identity and the history and the language. And Zaev has to agree to those things, but Zaev doesn't actually have a government right now, so it's a hot mess.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the title of this podcast.
Yeah.
It's a hot mess. So what's the scuttlebutt there on all that vis-a-vis Bulgaria?
I mean, they elected. This is a classical move by social democratic parties in Europe. They, especially in the Balkans, in Slovenia, it's typical. They become loaded by their own people, so they form a new party and win elections under the same. The same people win elections under a new nominal leader. In this case, Radev, who is a social democrat, appointed several technocratic members of government. They quickly became kind of popular, looking interesting on television. They supplanted the other protest parties, one of which won one of the previous three elections they held, previous two elections they held this year. So now they concentrated the protest vote, but it's now more of a partisan affair with the Social Democrats than before. So they will probably have majority with the help of the other protest parties, and they would be more moderate toward Macedonia. If Zaev makes some grand gesture, accept something these coming days, technically they could even run it through the technical government, which is also appointed by the president. So the current government, they have placeholder. They're appointed by the president. The new guys which are coming used to be part of this, so they're close to the president. So they could have the technical government do this and escape political penalty in the public. They could do it themselves, but Zaev will have to do something. But we go back to this fact that, the evening of the vote of no confidence, after SDSM and DUI dragged out the proceeding in parliament all day, and everybody was looking for this member of parliament. So we first get a Facebook post, then a Facebook video from him, so we know he's still alive, etc. And then around 10 in the evening, VMRO said, okay, called it quits. They left home. They realized that no other member of parliament from the government is joining them. They were not allowed to enter the building. So Zaev practically kept his own members of parliament away from the building or locked within the building, but not allowed to enter the hall. This was another striking feature. It really looked like occupation of the parliament. So when VMRO eventually left, Zaev shows up, surrounded by the DUI members of government and two of his own people, but about 5 DUI people around him, pale as a ghost, sitting there quietly, doesn't say a word, with a mask on his face, while Talat Jaferi discusses, goes through the procedural motions in Albanian. So Zaev is with his headset sitting there, and the entire country, even people who like him, who support him, their media outlets, they said this does not look good. This does not sit right. Radio Free Europe said a prime minister who looked very sad. Instead of being boisterous, I defeated VMRO. Where are your votes? You don't have the votes. Something like that. He was. It was scary to look at him. Or hilarious. I mean, we have been predicting his comeuppance for a very long time, and now it has come up. But it was very interesting. Only the DUI members of parliament were giving, or his deputy prime minister gave a triumphant statement afterwards. But remember, Zaev tried to resign after losing the local elections on the 31st. He looked almost relieved when he was announcing his resignation. Then it's more like DUI is defeating the vote of no confidence than Zaev is actively defeating it. DUI said we are not accepting his resignation, so they are pushing him to remain. He wants to go, and all of this, what I'm saying, boils down to an impression that there is something really horrendous that Zaev will be asked to sign, approve, move forward in parliament in the coming days, and he does not want to do it. He does not look like he wants to sign a treaty with Bulgaria. He lost half of his party over this after the rebellion which started in SDSM, precisely when Zaev a year ago began accepting all Bulgarian demands. So he's losing the party, he's losing his own position, but he's still being ordered by somebody to just do this one more thing, and then we'll let you go. And he doesn't look like he wants to do it, and he's been missing for 6 days now. So it's a really interesting situation.
Wow, it is. And nobody can really predict where this is going to go. I mean, you don't even have the votes to open a session of parliament. There's no government. Bulgaria, and the other thing I want to mention about Bulgaria, as they try to form a government, even if they form a government in the next 2 weeks, the interest of the new government is still mostly internal issues. Yep. I think Macedonia is down on the list. They've got a whole lot of problems in Bulgaria, the economy, COVID, and some of the other things that they've got to deal with those first. I mean, Macedonia is down the list.
I mean, we've been asking for a deal that will be implemented in the future. So let's begin the talks and then we implement it over the next years. So they might accept something like this. I mean, who knows? If Zaev makes a grand gesture, accepts several of their major positions outright, and then is allowed to resign, they might be persuaded to accept. I don't know.
But again, I think some of those, it's worth repeating some of their demands, and I don't have them in front of me. Yeah. Maybe we can cobble them together here. One is basically an agreement that the Macedonian history before 1944, I think, is essentially Bulgarian history. The Macedonian language is a dialect of Bulgarian, but before 1944 it was essentially Bulgarian. Those are the two main ones, I think. And then, of course, all that translates over into changing the so-called hate speech. We're not allowed to. They get very offended, and they get very sad too, Cvetin, over the fact that we call them the Bulgarian fascist occupiers of Macedonia during World War II, deporting 7,000 Jews or more to their deaths, Macedonian Jews, and things of that nature. So they get very angry, upset, and sad over the so-called hate speech.
Zaev said he will stop, he will erase every mention of a Bulgarian fascist occupier, which was a commonly used phrase, especially by his own people, by his own party. And another demand is that a more recent demand, which has been gaining prominence, that we amend the constitution and include the Bulgarian community in the list of. So now this used to be like, we used to have like minority groups in the mentioned in the constitution. Then they became named the portions of the nations of Albanians, Serbs who live within Macedonia. So they were elevated to you're a nation in your own country, and here a portion of that nation lives here, which is an open call for irredentism from everybody. Now that's a very dangerous formulation. Now, but it still, kind of like denotes that they're a minority. So the Bulgarians, they're not willing to give up on the position that we all Macedonians are Bulgarians. So some of them are concerned about this option to have the Bulgarian community named separately in the constitution, and there is only like several hundred people who would register as Albanians as Bulgarians in the census. So it's going to be a very small, on paper, community, even though Bulgaria has issued over 100,000 passports to Macedonians who promptly used them to flee to Germany. So they're debating, do we want to press on until the Macedonians redefine the term Macedonian to mean a former, now recently deracinated Bulgarian, or do we want a separate designation Bulgarians in the constitution? And they have been moving toward this second option. So Zaev can't give them this. It will require 81 votes. VMRO said they will not support this. unless Bulgaria also accepts that there are Macedonians in Bulgaria and adds them to their own constitution, which is, going to cause, meltdown in Bulgaria. So he can't give them much before by mid-December, Zaev, but I don't know, he may make some crazily grand gesture and then try to flee the country. I don't know.
Where's he going to go?
That's also interesting. Well, maybe Bulgaria or Greece, to the American ambassador in Greece, who would give him protection.
Yeah, he's not going to Hungary.
Yeah, Switzerland has also been mentioned, or possibly even Latin America.
I think you should go to Latin America.
Yeah, that's
Banana
the
Republic.
option. Yeah.
So, Nicaragua, actually. I think Danny Ortega just got his 18th term as president or something like that. So, I think you should go to Nicaragua. So
he can go to Argentina. He was recently recorded. There was a tape of him ordering a steak in a restaurant, asking for it to be well done with the champion sauce, and he meant mushroom sauce, the champignon sauce, So he would be he would fit in Argentina very well.
Oh, well done? No, medium rare. That's the only way to eat steak. So.
Yeah.
Oh, well. Well, crap. Of course, on top of this, I was just reading an article by our old friend Nikos Kotzias, the former foreign minister of the former Ottoman province of Greece, and the foreign minister he was foreign minister when Zoran Zaev signed the so-called Prespa agreement. So he had an article in Katamarini over the weekend, about basically warning that if VMRO gets back into power, then all hell's going to break loose. I love it that he says use of the illegal name, quote, Republic of Macedonia, unquote, by 8 newly elected mayors should not be underestimated. So it's illegal to say Republic of Macedonia, according to Nikos Kotzias. So a champion of free speech, I see. So anyway,
This was done by SDSM, when they lost the election. Some of them, those who want to survive in government, which I don't think Zaev counts among them anymore, but those who wanted to survive, so practically they staged a walkout in Štip when, nobody uses, obviously, North Macedonia, when the VMRO and the other members of the council, which are in the majority there as in most other municipalities, they said just Republic of Macedonia. So SDSM, they endangered themselves in a pretty patriotic city to stage a walkout, just to send a message to the U.S. ambassador, listen, if you allow them to form a government, they're going to undermine Prespa, so, this treaty is out the window. So they put themselves in danger in their own hometown just to try to protect Zaev and insist that, we will be the loyal, the obedient, servants of the U.S. embassy here. Just keep us in place somehow, sabotage this vote of no confidence. Don't let Mickovsky form a government. Please, please, please. So this was their position. Zaev is no longer pushing it. He started this. Some of his media outlets are saying, okay, this is a pro-Russian parties are going to grab power. Hungarian parties, they were accusing Danilov of being a Bulgarian, the candidate, the now mayor of Skopje. So they tried all of this, see what sticks. But it boils down to we will be obedient, we will do what we're told, while these guys, they will try to reassert sovereignty in Macedonia, and you can't let them form a government again. I mean, this might be the position of the Bulgarian government. They say, okay, we have to protect Zaev. Listen, he's a fellow social democrat, and he would do our bidding, so we will let them open accession talks to protect him.
Right. Yeah, no, it's I think, once this hot mess of what's going on with the Macedonian government, the Zaev regime, opposition takes control, whatever, all that stuff, once all that's figured out, then I mean, this is always going to bubble under the surface until it rises to the surface, and that is the issue of once VMRO is back in power, and at some point they will be back in power. That's just, I think, a fact. Then the whole issue of the Greeks screaming, and of course the American State Department, the American Embassy, the European Union, NATO, etc., all screaming about the illegal name Republic of Macedonia is going to come rushing back in front of our faces. And so I'm working on a new kind of a larger paper, I guess, a white paper on this whole issue of, I call it reclaiming what is rightly yours. And of course, we are of the position that Macedonia, as a sovereign nation state, has every right to reclaim, to do what it thinks is in its best interests, and that is, in this case, to reclaim the name legally on all fronts of Macedonia. So, so anyway, we'll just keep watching that, monitoring that, and I gotta finish this thing up and get it out there. So, it'll be one of these 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 word articles. So it'll be a hefty piece.
Yeah, I mean, this obviously these past few days we could have been issuing papers and doing a daily podcast. It was so crazy. Now we just rushed through the main events, but bottom line, we had a repeat of what was happening in the parliament when the name change was made, like when Zaev was literally arresting members of parliament, charging them with terrorism, charging their children, friends, with all sorts of charges just to force them to vote for the name change. And we had a repeat of this situation in a slightly smaller scale, but after a clearly expressed, people's will that Zaev needs to go, that he failed in his one main, most important issue, which was that by making concessions to our neighbors, the country will join the EU, join NATO, of course, but nobody really cares about that, but join the EU, get some funding, get rights to travel and work in the EU, and this failed. He was humiliated by France, by Bulgaria, by the Dutch, who intervened ahead of this vote. So we had this very strange visit by the Dutch Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, while Zaev was practically awaiting the vote of no confidence the day before this. And he kind of lamely said, we support you to join the EU. Before that, we blocked countries like you, but now we kind of support you. But then, we realized a little later that this Recepi guy, he was obviously pressured, he was obviously threatened. He had a curious bruise on his neck when he eventually appeared in person. But he also, turns out, he has been working for the Dutch embassy for 12 years, together with Artan Grubi, Zaev's deputy prime minister. And, this is why considering how openly the Dutch ambassadors were involved in Macedonian political affairs, since Simone Filippini up to Votar Plomp, their ambassadors have been among the loudest in bringing down VMRO and electing Zaev. Rutte is an outspoken enemy of Orban and Orbanite politics in Europe. So this definitely played a role. So he was also probably reeled in from another corner because he's actually part of, BESA is this political Islam party. It's an Erdoganist party, the party he belonged in. Ironically named BESA, which in Albanian means the word, but also you can trust us. When I give you my BESA, my word, you can trust me. And they've been, switching sides and etc. But he's like a Islamist member of parliament. We don't have super Islamist members of parliament, but he gets there to some point, to some degree. And he's apparently he had a TV appearance after the first round of the election. He was running for mayor of Chair in Skopje and failed badly. He had a TV appearance with Sasha Ordanovsky, a loyalist of Zaev, a journalist who was very loyal to Zaev, and who's very close with another Islamist, and Zaev's very close friend, and the leader of the Albanian wing in SDSM, Muhammad Zakiri. So he was probably approached by both the Islamist wing in SDSM and in Dui. There is a wing in Dui which is Islamist, and also by this Dutch intelligence influence operation. So, and I guess they had a few others to spare. There was another member of parliament from the Alternative Party who was saying, well, I'm not sure if I'll vote. I don't like being in the same company with Levica. You know, they're anti-NATO, anti-US. So, you know, if it wasn't for this guy, there might have been someone else. Maybe who would have stayed until the vote and then voted against, and then tried to flee the room. So, I don't know. A lot of influences.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. So,
progressive leftists making common cause with an Islamist, with the Dutch government, liberal government of the Netherlands. It's a very curious coalition we have here.
So what it is what you're saying is that Macedonia doesn't really have a parliament; it has a marketplace.
Yeah.
It's a lot of where horse trading occurs. I mean, and that is, you know, in a way, all parliaments, or in our case, the U.S. Congress. There's a lot of horse trading that goes on there. We see that, you know, right now with what Joe Biden is trying to do. But yeah, and then actually I want to mention, I saw something with Mindu Thaci, whose name we haven't brought up in this podcast in a long time, leader of DPA, used to be the largest party, ethnic Albanian minority party in Macedonia many years ago. Arben Jaferi was the leader, but when he died, the party died essentially, and Mindu Thaci is trying to be relevant, trying to give validation to his life, which he won't be able to do by talking about something you mentioned earlier, how basically Russia's involved in all this, and I do see that more and more, not just from members of parliament and others in Macedonia, but you know, the think tanks and some media folks, etc., outside of Macedonia, all talking about Russia, and how VMRO is pro-Russian. I think I've got to follow up on that idiot at American Enterprise Institute, Ivana Stradner, I think, who tweeted out about 2 weeks ago that VMRO is a pro-Russian party, which of course is nothing could be further from the truth. It was the first party back in 91 or 2 to call for Macedonia's membership in NATO and the EU. Cvetin, formerly the League of Communists of Macedonia, said, yes, we should, but after VMRO did. So there's absolutely, I mean, it's just false. It's a bloody lie. But it's being repeated more and more, I see, by people both inside and outside of Macedonia, and they're trying to spin it. I get that. This is politics. It's a rough game. That's the way it works. And subsequently also painting Cvetin and Zoran Zaev as the pro-Western, pro-EU, pro-NATO party. And that's just the way the game's played. So,
yeah, I used to love going to the AEI in DC, but huge disappointment.
Well, with some of the, and she's a visiting fellow. She's a Serbian. So there's obviously something at work there. I think the majority of people at AEI are still good people. I like to listen and listen to a lot of them that do podcasts and read their works and whatnot. So I think she's just a fluke in many different ways. But anyway, she was just the example that came to mind. But there's plenty of them out there.
I mean, DPA touches a lost opportunity for VMRO to create a proper conservative post-national, I mean not post-national, but not so single-mindedly devoted to national politics like DUI is, an Albanian party that, you wouldn't be ashamed to have in the coalition. And even though, Mendo is a thug like Ahmeti, but obviously you need to be a thug to some level to if you're dealing with Ahmeti there. So VMRO missed an opportunity to elevate them as a coalition partner in 2008 when they had a chance to replace DUI. Now it's a second opportunity with the Alliance of Albanians and BESA, who seem serious about replacing DUI. They will lose votes. They lost on aggregate to DUI. They do not represent the majority of ethnic Albanians. But if we form a pre-election coalition, VMRO and the Alliance of Albanians and BESA, you wouldn't know which party won the most Albanian votes. And this coalition would likely beat SDSM DUI if they hang together. So, and besides, there is a precedent which DUI made that we no longer have to have the majority winner of the ethnic Albanians in coalition, because DUI decided to go with the loser among ethnic Macedonians in 2016 and 2020. So, up there's. So there is a chance to try to, repeat this, to correct this mistake from the past. Otherwise, we would fall back on having like VMRO and DUI in a coalition pretty soon, and that's really going to be a depressing development.
Oh. All right. Well, I think we've kind of covered everything up to now. Events are moving. Well, they were moving rather quickly, and then all of a sudden kind of hit a brick wall.
Yeah.
It seems like nothing's happening. But as we mentioned, some of those dates and alternative making a decision next week, etc. I guess we'll know something by next week. But in the meantime, I do think you need to send out folks to try and find Zoran Zaev wherever he might be.
Yeah. An APB on Zaev.
Exactly. Yeah. Amber Alert. So.
Yeah. No, he really hit it coming. That's the poetic justice here.
Yes.
We have a saying, a guy who tried to dance the oro, he paid money to be allowed to dance with the other villagers, and then he had to pay money to be allowed to let go. It means like you want to be in some company, you think it's going to be profitable, etc. And then when you realize what you've gotten yourself into, you desperately want to get out of the oro, which is this dance where everybody's holding hands in a circle. So you want to leave the circle, but now it's going to be really difficult for him to do it.
Yeah. Well, he brought it upon himself.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, this has been a good chat and looking at events, and we'll circle back soon and as things develop.
Yeah. Watch this space.
Yeah. Right. Good talking to you, Cvetin.
You too, buddy. Take care.